Well, hello again. We are active. Everything is pressed. All the record buttons are going. It's Andy from Snow Camps Europe and Paul from Ski Instructor Academy. And what we've got today...
We're sharing a light you forgot to mention.
We're sharing a light, yes. I forgot to charge
the other light's gone off.
And I actually couldn't be bothered to get the other lights out that plug in because I'm sort of rushing around between getting back and going to Argentina.
You were about to say you hadn't charged the other one up, and then you said you couldn't be bothered.
Couldn't be bothered.
Your commitment
to this podcast, I know. Hey, but look, guys, I will be committed because I am going to, by the time this goes out, I'll be in Argentina. And we will probably just be starting on the hill with myself and Gary Tumbas. So join us on there because we're going to be pushing out some really good and interesting subjects about skiing itself on the mountain and actually looking at ski technique for people who are older, people with injuries, all sorts of things that'll be of interest. But meanwhile on the podcast, I'm still digging through comments. Good advice from Greg Park, by the way, just so I mention that. He always says the funniest bits of the podcast are at the end. So, don't just watch 5 minutes. or just fast forward to the end.
Yeah. But still press like, share and comment.
You can, if you can. Who we got first? Peter Runrig. What was his... Oh, yes. So Peter's comment was about... footbeds. What did he say?
Oh, love them or hate them. Use them or don't.
So what's wrong with custom footbeds? First time I have heard this. He was responding to Tom Gelly and my part 2. He also asked about any experience with Apex style ski boots. Let's do the Apex style ski boots first because when I start waffling on about footbeds, poor Andy's going to sit there and fall asleep. Apex style boots.
Apex style boots. I think these are the boots which are like a snowboard boot. And they have the little ratchety closure, and then you put
the BOA system.
You put that's what it's called, yeah. You put that into a plastic shell, but it's not a total plastic shell. It's like a skeleton kind of shell. And again, it kind of, the bottom buckle is a little bit like a snowboardy thing, goes over the toe, and yeah. So what do you want to know?
Well, basically, he's just asking his opinion. Now, from looking at it on their website, I'm just looking at who's sort of backing it up and things like that. I think Tom and we must have mentioned something about we tend to ski, particularly at the start of the season, and often whenever we're teaching with the boots completely undone. Mm-hmm. And this would then fit into this point here, Peter, that if you are not going to want to ski super dynamically, race or something like that, full-on performance, then you could be skiing in a pair of tennis shoes and strap them to your binding and get away with it.
And these don't look far from some of the tennis shoes I've played tennis in.
So it's down to how much rigidity you want, how much torsional rigidity you need, because obviously from torsion point of view, so if you look at physics here, if you look at a very soft ski that you can basically twist from end to tip. So you imagine I'm talking now from end to tip. You can often grab the tip of a ski in the tail and literally twist the ski. You wouldn't be to do that, for example, on a race ski, something that's really stiff because it doesn't want to have that bend in it in that direction. These boots would have the same problem. Torsionally, as pressure builds, there's going to be an issue with them holding the force, and that force has to go somewhere else, which actually could, if you were trying to ski dynamically on them, have an issue with tendons, etc. as well. Now, I know these guys at Apex here will probably get in touch and shout at me.
Yeah, but I'm just seeing that top thing then, if you just scroll down again, ski hard, walk easy. I don't understand this focus about walking. They're ski boots. You ski in them. You don't walk in them. And of course, they're not going to be comfortable to walk in. But how far are you walking?
Yeah. Which is a good thing. Otherwise, get a pair of touring boots. Yeah. But Peter, it's hard for us to make real comment because we have not tested these boots. However, we did get something very similar to these boots, and I had some of our trainers test them because when I looked at them, I thought, I'm not putting them on my feet. So I gave them to the trainers and they tested them, and they were really pushing them. They actually came from one of those Lion's Den, startup things, and they got a huge investment. We then got to test the boots, and the problem was we couldn't say anything good about them, so we didn't. We didn't give feedback. We thought to be pleasant. So I think, and don't get me wrong, when you look at this, they're sponsored and they've got people, different types of people who are, good skiers clearly, and who are going to, if I played through their videos, I'm sure they're going to say, wow, these are really, really good boots if you want to walk.
I was thinking après. They look good for après.
They look good for après.
But then what happens when you take your snowboard boot with your foot? What happens to that plastic bit? You got to carry that around with you.
What, you mean you think you actually just walk in the soft bit and then you put the thing on?
You do. Yeah. That's your après boot there. That's for walking après. Right. And you must leave the other bit clipped into your skis. Just stupid. But then carrying that clipped into your skis, if they want to send me a pair, I'll try them.
Yeah, you try anything for free.
Oh, yeah? True,
there's no doubt about it. He wants to sponsor whiskey or something as well. I won't. But the boots, Peter, I really do think that if you're not going to be hammering about and you want something spongy and something soft and comfortable, I don't know how it might adversely affect your skiing. That's the only thing, which actually, Peter, it brings me, maybe it's to help you, it brings me on to the other comment you made, which was to do with, you said, custom footbeds. I've never heard about this. What's wrong with them? Actually, we can tie these two subjects together. So how can I make custom footbeds? Obviously, you could just watch some of my previous videos on feet, but if you don't, think about this like a weightlifting belt. So a weightlifting belt is like something which always winds me up when I see people training in the gym. Like, you see people doing their bicep curls and they've got a weightlifting belt on. Or, they're doing bench press and they're wearing their weightlifting belt. Or even they're doing deadlifts and they're wearing a weightlifting belt. Now, the question is what does a weightlifting belt do and why is it there? Now, what people don't understand is, first of all, weightlifting belts, generally, the general ones you can purchase are actually very bad in essence. So most weightlifting belts, you think, they tend to be very thin at the front, and then they go around the back, they're really thick. Yeah. Now, anybody who knew anything about anatomy and how a weightlifting belt works would actually wear the belt back to front. They would put the big thick bit at the front of their belly and actually put the buckle at the back, which would be funny because people in the gym would go, oh, look at that idiot, he's put the belt on back to front. But actually, he clearly knows what a weightlifting belt's supposed to do. So a weightlifting belt, when you're lifting weight, it trains your abdominals in a different way, because what we do with a weightlifting belt is we push against it. So we bloat, in effect, against a weightlifting belt to create tension and stability. So you can, in theory, then lift more weight. Mm-hmm. Now, that in a way, though, if you constantly wear a weightlifting belt, it will give you atrophy in your stomach muscles, in your core. You will actually get a weaker and weaker core. Mm-hmm. And the other problem you have is if you wear a weightlifting belt, and let's say you can, lift twice your body weight in a deadlift or whatever, and you're happy with yourself, but then you go and lift a couch or a sofa with somebody, you pop your back out. The reason is because you're not used to bracing your core in the correct way without a weightlifting belt. There are two different ways. With a weightlifting belt, you brace your core by pushing against it. But when you create intra-abdominal pressure, when you're actually bracing normally without a weightlifting belt, that is a complete different set of muscles and how you work. So therefore, it's the same with a custom footbed. By putting a footbed in, you basically are switching off the muscles, the tendons, everything you need to use to keep a foot arch. Now remember, there's more than one foot arch, particularly the transverse arch, this one that's always missed across from your little pinky toe to your big toe. This gets weaker and weaker. So in effect, a footbed is teaching you to be weaker in your foot stability. Whereas not having a footbed is teaching your feet to do what they were naturally born to do, and that is to create stability and torque and tension in your foot arch. And this is very important. The other thing a footbed does is it narrows your foot circumference. So it can narrow it with some footbeds, I believe, so I've heard, like by about 5 to 6 millimeters. So in effect, you don't get splay. If you could see the video, you'll see my fingers splaying. This is what happens when you put pressure on your feet and it splays out. Now, if you've got a footbed in, that splay will not happen because the footbed's blocking your foot arch from pronating, collapsing, and therefore the foot doesn't expand that way. Now, if you look at doing, let's say, a two-legged deadlift or a squat or something, you would think you want to have big, fat, fleshy feet. You want the biggest surface area you can to push off. Whereas what that's doing is it's creating a smaller surface area, in effect, the footbed. And also it's discouraging pronation as far as I can see, because it's basically trying to block your foot arch, which in the argument of ski world is, it'll give more quicker, accurate movements onto the edge of your ski. So in essence, as I've tried to mention there, I've tried to sort of say, well, look, it's a bit like you're creating weakness by using a footbed. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people need a footbed because they already have weakness there. And then it's difficult because what you then need to do is you need to wear it when you need, necessity says, but not always. Like I said in the gym, when the guy's walking around with his weightlifting belt on permanently as part of like his, look at me, I'm going to the gym and he's got his, his shaker, protein shaker bottle and a weightlifting belt over his shoulder, and he puts it on. Everything he does, he's got a weightlifting belt on. When I'm coaching somebody in the gym, I think 1% of people need a weightlifting belt. Very few people should have a weightlifting belt on. And only if the person's starting to lift serious weight. When I'm deadlifting, I was deadlifting just 2 days ago there. I didn't put a weightlifting belt on until I got to double body weight. And only then did I put the weightlifting belt on. And I certainly wasn't wearing it to do bicep curls. It doesn't make sense.
That does seem a little bit strange. I was thinking when you first mentioned weightlifting belt, I was like, oh yeah, I can't actually remember the last time I actually saw somebody with a weightlifting belt in the gym. Now, granted, I haven't been in the gym in ages, but when I was in the gym. But going back onto the footbed, so what I think you're saying is I have a weakness because if I don't have footbeds in my boots, I get terrible pains under the ball of my foot. Yeah. Real bad burning. And therefore I do, who are we talking to? Peter?
Peter, yeah.
Yeah, Peter. I do use a footbed because if I don't have a footbed, I'm in agony. But maybe that would mean I needed to train my foot.
Yeah, so what you can do to get around that is say, right, it's not sensible for you not to wear a footbed because you want to be comfortable when you ski. So it doesn't make any sense me saying, rip them out, Andy, and stop being that, be a man. That's stupid. No. What now has to happen is Andy needs to develop the strength in his foot arches. He needs to develop better control of his feet, and you can only do that by being in barefoot, by doing certain exercises. I'm going back even to strengthening soleus, gastrocs, higher up the chain, the tibialis and stuff, but more importantly focusing on toe spread, focusing on somebody getting a foot arch and showing them how to actually create a foot arch, which sounds weird, but people with flat feet or collapsed feet, then we have people with high foot arches. Yeah. It makes a huge difference, but you can train your feet if you want to, and it will make a difference. I think Tom, myself, I think Tom was saying to me that, was it Riley or somebody, don't use a footbed, a very minimal sort of footbed. And this comes down to where I've said before, where really skilled podiatrists and that, they will put in children who have problems with their feet a type of footbed that's not a footbed traditionally as we think of it. It's a footbed that encourages them not to touch it. So it's almost like a training thing, like to say, you're not going to touch this footbed. It's there, and you've got to actually keep off it. And this is encouraging them to straighten everything back up. Because if you're going to start to collapse and pronate excessively, your Achilles is going to be running off in a weird angle. I was running yesterday, and we were behind a runner. And I said to Julian, I says, look at that guy's running gait at the minute. He was completely duck-footed. It must have been out by about 15 or 20 degrees running. And that's obviously how he runs. Now, the first thing I'd be saying to this guy is, can you actually, walk or run with your feet pointing forward. You'd be surprised, a lot of times people just go, oh yeah, I can.
Yeah.
So why the hell are you doing that? Yeah. Because that gait, his knees are...
make it worse and worse.
Well, his knees are pushed right in. And this is why he will start getting he'll get knee pain. No doubt about it. And he'll think he's got knee pain when actually what he's got is bad stance. He's got a bad foot position that's creating higher up the chain knee pain. And the answer will be, oh, let's stick some footbeds in. Let's now put a wrap around his patella or whatever. These are just bandages. You need to stop doing that. We need to look for answers for long term, Peter. And really important is, as Andy said, if you do get that burning sensation and you do get cramps in your feet, then look at the volume of the boot, first of all, because, Andy's problem might be you might be just a little bit too squashed to the side.
Yeah.
And this will create a false transverse arch, almost like just squash everything together. That will create that burning sensation. And equally, a weak pronation where you're pronating when you shouldn't pronate. So pronation in skiing is pretty good. You can use supination and pronation to really enhance your carving turns. And I remember doing an exercise with somebody about 7-8 seasons ago. I was skiing with a good skier and I was saying, have you ever tried playing with this a little bit more where you actively supinate, actually do the opposite at the start of a turn, and you allow pronation to build when you're toppling and build with the apex of the turn. And it's like a bit of a weird sensation because by focusing on the supination part, it made them focus in one way on the pronation part as well. So it's pretty complex, but Peter, it's not wrong in skiing. It's one of the few sports where footbeds can make a difference if the necessity's there, but be careful of really hard footbeds. I don't like. Be careful of aggressive footbeds, really overbuilt. And also see if you can lessen the footbed, if you like, make it softer, 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 flatter and flatter and flatter over time, and beware of the volume of your boot.
I think another thing is, when you go and buy a pair of ski boots now versus when you went and bought a pair of ski boots in the early 80s, let's say, it's almost a given that, right, you're buying a pair of boots and then they go, and you need some footbeds.
Yeah.
And it's an add-on, it's an add-on, it's an extra sale. And the boots, obviously, if a pair of boots are $499, or we can upsell them for another $60 with a pair of insoles. And I remember the first time I actually had any custom-made insoles, I bought a pair of Technica boots from Snow and Rock in Chertsey, and the girl said, and you need a pair of footbeds. And I was like, oh, all right, whatever. I had a bit of money at the time. And she put me on the sandbag things, and she shaped it, and she took it away, and she was grinding it down and whatever. And I went on holiday to Italy. Or was it Salzburg? Wherever it was, Italy or Salzburg. And I was in agony, absolute agony, and I couldn't work it out. And on about the fourth day, I took the footbed out, and I was like, that doesn't look quite right. I could still see the pen mark where she'd drawn around. So she hadn't quite reduced the length of it enough. So
it's folded,
when you put the footbed back into the inner boot, and then as I then did this, I put it in, you could see it poke right through where your toe box was and curl up. So I was literally, my foot was like this. All my toes were curled up.
Bent up.
And I was in absolute agony.
Which, what you're describing, by the way, when you said your toes were like this is what we call toe spring. And it's built into modern sports shoes nowadays, and it's very bad for athletes. But again, that's how Nike, Adidas, everybody sets their shoes up with this toe spring, because it's meant to be easier to walk, like almost like a rock and rolling system. But it basically switches off your big toe. And in skiing, you often probably use the phrase, big toe, little toe.
Little toe, yeah.
But you can't use it. In your case, in skiing there, with toe spring, you wouldn't be able to use your big toe. It's switched off.
Yeah. Very bad, very, very. That was my first footbed.
And which is, again, the argument with footbeds, Peter, is that a lot of the time they can be useful, but they're often just badly fitted because they're an add-on sales trick, and people want you to buy them, and they really don't, they're not assessing whether you need one. Has anybody ever said to you, put the boot on, and then actually before they do that, done a few assessments on your mobility, on your ankle mobility, and looked at your foot arch and, poked it a bit to see if there's any tender spots or anything like that? No, they rely upon the fact of just adding it on. A master boot fitter may ask some questions, he may not, but generally, like Andy says, they'll want to sell the add-on. It's like, when you used to buy your shoes and it always came with, do you want the cleaning products?
Yeah.
It's
suede brush.
No, I don't want it. But yeah, it's Peter, it's a bit of a contentious issue. There is a very big video. I'll try and dig it out and attach the link regarding feet and boot fitting, where I might harper on and whine about them a little longer. But what I will do is, again, in Argentina, we'll look a little bit closely at this, because I think it was Peter or one of the people who mentioned about training in boots as well. Like, would you do any off-hill training in boots? Yeah. And it'll give me a chance to break it down. I'll have to remember to get some footbeds from somewhere, because I don't use them. But yeah, we'll have another look closely at it. But I hope that gives you a little insight. I'm not saying that I'm completely bad for everybody, because there is a necessity, but equally you have to ask yourself why. And Peter, the easiest way that I describe it on my other video is I explain from an engineering point of view that arches, like arches in a bridge, are very strong. Foot arches are strong. Now, arches in a bridge, you would not then get a big strut and put it and build it in the middle of the arch. Why, therefore, are we putting this strut in our feet? This doesn't make sense, because we need the spanning, the tension of this arch, and you are just basically taking the tension out of a bridge, for example, by putting in a strut. It actually weakens it. So you are weakening things by putting a strut in. Does that make it any clearer? No, did I just talk double Dutch?
No, it's amazing. We've gone from weightlifting belts to bridges, and you're now an engineer as well.
It's amazing what I know.
Because when you said engineering, I thought you meant surely you're on about biometrics. Or
I've always told you, Andy, I know a lot. Just don't ask me about beer, wine, or food, and I can talk all day. I'm sorry, Stairmaster man. I've barely made 22. Oh no, hang on. We'll add on Greg. We'll add on Greg's comment, because Greg went on to say about the ski host and instructor thing, which is a very popular video.
Yep.
I'm an advanced skier, but still love taking lessons to improve my technique. Group lessons are great, as the numbers in advanced lessons are always low. Mm-hmm. As a bonus, you discover runs you never knew existed, even at the resort you may be familiar with. Thanks, guys. Mm-hmm. Now, the big point here from Greg is thanks, guys. No, that's not the big point. The big point from Greg is that issue of you can get almost a private in advanced lessons in the groups, because it's just nobody takes advanced group lessons, and the ski school has to run it. It has an obligation to have like different levels, and unless it's a bad ski school and it takes the advanced group and mixes it in with very moderate, beginnery, immediates, and then that's a problem. You want to ask for your money back. Yeah. But if you're in one of those advanced low groups, low number groups, it's great, isn't it? I mean, it's the best thing ever.
Yeah, you could quite often be in there with 4, maximum 6 people, which isn't dissimilar to the size of our camp groups. Yeah,
exactly.
Which are predominantly all very good improver or advanced skiers. And you've got again, for the cost, what you've paid to be in a group with 4 people for the week versus if you'd paid for privates is a massive difference. So the value for money element is fantastic. And as he said, you'll go places that you wouldn't normally go and see things that you wouldn't normally see.
You get a bit of a crack with like-minded skiers. That's what's cool about it. So I've always, when I've done things, I've always tried to do it privately, because I prefer that. I'm not really a group person. But Peter's got a point.
I think isn't it socially blunt?
Socially blunt. John's term for me. Yes, so, but I think, Greg's hit the nail on the head. This is a great opportunity for people to revisit skiing in a cheap way.
Just going back to you saying that you would do it privately, but the majority of the things, would I be right in saying the majority of the things you've done or do are kind of things like your skydiving or the cycling, or they're not team sports, are they? Yeah,
I mean, even like squash or something. But I did coach some team sports but then didn't play within the team.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the reason why. I don't feel comfortable anyway in an environment with too many other people.
Yeah.
So, and that's why, well, as you know, I always taught privately as well. I didn't really teach groups.
No.
I think when you're teaching groups in the sense of a ski instructor training group, it's a bit different then because you've got a focus. Yeah. But teaching a recreational ski instructor or group, it needs more of the social element. Like we've talked about ski hosting. Yeah. It's got more to do with that nowadays. You don't need somebody like me talking about physics or engineering and bridges. Yeah. You just want to enjoy the skiing and enjoy the people's company around you, and I think socially blunt people like me should be kept in the closet. Well, 25 minutes, still not doing good for the Stairmaster guy. You're going to have to get on the treadmill again.
Yep. For those who don't know, Richard is watching on his Stairmaster, and we need to do 30 minutes or more.
No, we need to do 60 minutes. He's telling me.
It's 60.
60 minutes.
I can't do 60. We have to record 4 of these at a time. That'll take 4 hours.
I know. Tell us about it. Sorry. Anyway, so is another one.
Comments below, like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. See you on the next one.